So your grandmother and I created the Hunters.
We put together a group of Nazi hunters.
We're a lockpicker, spy, soldier, master of disguise,
Showtime.
and 2 weapons experts.
We would bring God's justice. What do you say?
I want in.
I want to do it. Go, 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 go.
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood is taking a very well-deserved vacation. He'll be back whenever he damn well feels like it. In the meantime, though, Bryce, what was that video at the top of the show?
That was a trailer for Amazon Prime's video's upcoming Hunters. Inspired by true events, a young man in 1977 discovers that his late grandmother was part of a vigilante Nazi hunting gang, and they're out for revenge. That's coming to Amazon Prime Video February 21st.
A little hunting action. I like it. It looks like a pretty good cast too, actually.
Yeah, and also executive produced by I had the name. Like Us and Get Out. Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele. That's the name. Not Saul Rubinek. He's just an actor.
That's right. That's right.
Jordan Peele and Saul Rubinek, not the same person.
Different people. But looks really cool. Another sort of gritty action drama from Amazon Prime.
Yeah. From back when I was 7 years old. Joining us today, Hammond Chamberlain, podcaster extraordinaire. Hammond, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you back, man.
Thanks. I was actually looking since 2018 that I was here.
Wow, 2018.
Well, we did have that ban on you in 2019, but it's expired now, thankfully. So I'm glad we could get you back. Man, has it really been that long? That's crazy.
Yeah, it was summer of 2018.
It's funny, like we rented this to DTNS too, where we're like, oh, it's about time to get this person back on the show, and they'll be like, it's been 2 years. I'm like, it's just too many good people out there. But very, very glad that you're with us today, because we got some Oscar nominations to talk about. We got some CES tech to catch up on, some stuff that happened after we talked last week. Let's start with our primary target. Now, we always like to look at the Oscar nominations, just like we like to look at the Golden Globe nominations, to see how the streaming services are doing. And specifically this year, I think it is noteworthy. I think this is newsy. Netflix got the most Oscar nominations of any studio. Let that sink in. Not just of any streaming service, not just of any network, because this isn't TV, this is movies only. Netflix got 24 Oscar nominations. Take that, Steven Spielberg. He was trying to get Netflix kicked out of the Oscars, but they came back with a vengeance. For comparison's sake, Sony is the number 2 studio. They had 20 Oscar nominations. Among the movies, the movie that got the most nominations was not a Netflix movie. It was The Joker. The Joker got 11 nominations. That's the most of any single movie. But The Irishman for Netflix led the way for Netflix movies with 10 nominations. Irishman, of course, with Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor in a Supporting Role for both Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, Best Adapted Screenplay, Visual Effects, a couple others in there as well, costumes and such. Marriage Story, the Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson led title, got 6 nominations. Adam Driver for Best Actor, Scarlett Johansson for Best Actor, Laura Dern for Supporting, Noah Baumbach for Screenplay, and Randy Newman for Score. And then The Two Popes got Best Actor and Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor. Anthony Hopkins got it for that. That one's out on Netflix just recently. Then a couple documentaries, American Factory, The Edge of Democracy, and short documentary Life Overtakes Me all got a nomination. And an animated, Netflix has 2 nominations, I Lost My Body and Klaus. Hammond, this is quite, even if Netflix doesn't win a single Oscar, it's quite a slate.
Yeah, it's funny because for years, you guys have been talking about that moment where streaming services become vindicated, taken seriously, and kind of move into their own right as a powerhouse. And I think this is it. I think this is that moment.
Well, and I think what's interesting about this is when we talk about the Golden Globes is given out by the Hollywood Foreign Press. So it's not quite as prestigious. It's a combination of TV and movies. They have some funky categories that allow movies to get nominated in categories where they're not up against other movies. So, best comedy and musical is separated from best dramatic movie. So the Oscars is narrower. It's just movies. It's got narrow categories, but it's also prestigious. Like, this is the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. They rightly get criticized for reflecting biases in the industry. This year's definitely no exception to that, because they are representative of that industry. And it is interesting to me that in a year when Spielberg was railing against Netflix did so well, because this isn't just Netflix making good shows. This isn't Netflix making made-for-TV level movies. This is Netflix getting recognized for making the kind of movies that are considered great cinema by the people in the industry.
So my question is, are they rewarding Netflix, or are they rewarding Scorsese and Adam Driver? Mm-hmm. Or is it both?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I think it is an example of the Academy saying, we're going to look past who made this and say, was it a good movie? We're not going to get into Spielberg's game about, well, maybe they shouldn't be in here because they're not releasing it in theaters. We're just going to say, was it a good movie? And The Irishman, definitely a good movie. Marriage Story, definitely a good movie. I saw them both. I have not seen The Two Popes, but by all accounts, it's a great movie. This is just Netflix made some very quality, or got behind some very quality content.
And the power of winning an Oscar, that rolls forward, right? Suddenly, that's more power that Netflix as a studio is able to attract even bigger talent with. Say, we can campaign and we can get you hardware if you make your film with us and not with a Paramount, a Sony, what have you.
Or at least it's going to say, you don't want to go to Paramount and Sony because they can get you an Oscar, because we could too.
Yeah.
And you've seen that happen with documentaries. Documentary filmmakers definitely are favorable to Netflix because of that, in ways that they might not be favorable to other studios that might not get behind them as much. So yeah, and now that just getting Scorsese, frankly, does that. Like, hey, we got Scorsese to make us a picture. Come on, why couldn't you? But yeah, any question about like, well, I know streaming is doing well and lots of stars are doing it, but that kind of goes away. I don't even think they have to win a single Oscar
really
to be able to capitalize on that, because they can say, well, it's just a matter of time. I'm curious if you guys think they will win, given that they have 24 nominations. And let's discount, I hate to do this, but let's say, yeah, they might win documentary and animated. They've won those before. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we see them win in one of these big categories?
Well, it does look like they did win for Best Director last year with Roma.
That's true. They have taken home big hardware there already.
But not Best Picture, not Best Actor, or personnel at all. I don't know, Hammond. What do you think? Do Marriage Story or Irishman actually hold up against the rest of the slate?
Yes, I do. I think Irishman takes home. They've got 10. I think that they take home between 3 and 5, easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't see The Irishman winning Best Picture. 1917's probably going to take that home. That seems to be the smart money. It's possible The Joker takes that home. But I don't think The Irishman is the lock to get Best Picture. Scorsese historically does not get loved, does not get enough love from the Academy, but he does have an Oscar, so I don't think they'll be dying to give him an Oscar. But yeah, when you start to get into adapted screenplay, visual effects, Rise of Skywalker's in there for visual effects too. But I think there's a possibility that people reward them for the de-aging. They also might not. They might not think it worked that well. Joe Pesci absolutely should take home supporting, in my opinion. And I think that's probably their best bet.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up when you're talking about the studios and working with larger studios is maybe Netflix also says you can make what you want and we'll kind of stay out of your hair, which is a huge benefit for people who are making films is to not have studio interference.
I
yeah,
wonder,
sometimes
though.
people think that goes too far though, because you get a 3.5 hour Irishman.
And I know there's some level, at least for maybe this is when Netflix is simply scouting projects, but like when House of Cards came out, it was a big deal that like, oh, we looked at all of our data and it said this is the ideal cast for a show like this, and then they got everyone on that cast. And so I don't know if that happens before the creative side or if that informs what they decide to greenlight or not.
I mean, it's hard to tell with the Irishman, right? It's like everybody would have picked that all-star cast if they could, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't need an algorithm to tell me like, oh, you know what? I bet if you get Scorsese to direct De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci, it'll end up pretty good.
Yeah, that's probably that might work. That recipe might work, Tom.
Yeah. I believe you, algorithm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the rest of this, it does have to do with what you're up against. Adam Driver has a good shot at winning actor in a leading role, but Leonardo DiCaprio, Antonio Banderas, Joaquin Phoenix, and Joker. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about that. I think Joker is actually going to do very well in these categories. I don't see it getting Best Picture. I think it's an outside shot for Best Picture, but I think you could definitely see Joaquin Phoenix get it. And I think you could see that get it in a lot of the technical categories as well.
I have not seen Joker. Hammond, have you? And would you co-sign that?
So here's my problem is I have actually just had this conversation earlier today is I haven't seen Joker because it seems so grim and dark, and I've kind of had my fill of that for a while, and so I'm kind of waiting till I'm in the right frame of mind.
So you decided to go see 1917 instead?
I haven't seen it either yet. I've been trying to find the right frame of mind so that I can go in and actually try to enjoy it. Because if I go in the wrong frame, I'm gonna hate it from beginning to end just because of my mood, and I need to be in the right frame of mind to see it. So I have not seen it yet either.
Huh.
Well, take my word for it. It's I think it's got a shot at getting one of these. Parasite, which you've heard me banging the drum for, got a nomination for Best Picture. I don't think it's going to end up winning Best Picture. It's a lock for Best Foreign Film, though. I think, or I guess they're calling it International Film this year. But I think there's no way it doesn't just walk away with that category.
Yeah, it especially in terms of internet or non-American films, I guess is how they determine that category.
They call it international feature. That's the new category.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like Parasite was a sort of surprise hit, but I could see where that's still not enough to get into Best Picture, the ballpark of that.
Well, and you always have to compare it to what it's up against, right? Yeah. Parasite on its own is good enough to win Best Picture, but then so's The Irishman, so's Jojo Rabbit, so's Little Women, so's A Marriage Story. I mean, they're all nominated because they're good enough for that. So then it becomes, well, who will they vote for? I think there's a shot Little Women gets a vote, not only because it's a very good picture, but the tiebreaker for some people may be that it was, directed by female, and there are no female directors nominated. We didn't see her get nominated for Best Director. It's Martin Scorsese, Todd Phillips, Sam Mendes, Quentin Tarantino, and Bong Joon-ho.
Mm-hmm. And on the international feature list, this probably seems like a much more reasonable pool to be in for Parasite. Corpus Christi, Honeyland, Les Miserables, and Pain and Glory.
Pain and Glory is getting a lot of love from the critics. I have not seen that, and I know almost nothing about it.
The same.
But that's the one that I've noticed getting nominated in other areas. I don't know, might give it a little run for its money. I think that's what Antonio Banderas got.
I believe so, because I think he is also he got another nomination, for Best Actor in a Leading Role, Pain and Glory.
Yeah, and then of course some people are very upset that Scarlett Johansson got double nominated because that's too much. She has too many good things now because she got nominated for Best Actress for Marriage Story, but also Best Supporting Actress for Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, well, look, if you're in two movies, you get two shots. Look,
I mean, yeah.
If you're good in both movies, then you earned both shots.
Yeah.
Boy, if she wins both, though,
Aaron's
going to be really mad.
That'd be a landmark, wouldn't it?
I think it's happened before, but you're right. I don't really know the history on that off the top of my head. All right, let's take a break now and ask you to bring back Brian Brushwood. All right, we said he was on
Please.
holiday with the family. Maybe that's true, or maybe he's just holding out for your cooperation. Maybe if you become a Patreon at patreon.com/cordkillers, or even just raise your Patreon by $1 a month. You don't even have to raise it by $1 an episode. Maybe Brian will come back. I don't know. I miss him. I hope you do too. And in all seriousness, the reason that both of us keep doing this show, even if Brian's gone, Bryce and I step in, we get Hammond to help us out, is because you support it. So keep that support coming, folks. Patreon.com/Cordkillers.
That's right.
All right, let's talk about how to watch. Got a few more things coming out of CES. Oh, and man, I was so not upset, but I was disappointed that I didn't get to see the TiVo announcement until the day after Cordkillers. And I actually got to talk to the vice president from TiVo in charge of this. His name is Ted. And I got the scoop directly from him. So, you know, it was pretty great. I went to their booth at Digital Experience and got to see the TiVo Stream 4K. That is a streaming dongle made by TiVo, but running Android TV. So what TiVo did is they took that familiar TiVo interface. The one thing that people universally love about TiVo is the interface, right? Is the way that the software actually works on the front end. And they put that on Android TV running Sling TV for its live TV. So you put the dongle in, you got to pay for Sling TV, and then your Sling TV channels will go into the guide. They'll go into the DVR, which is also provided by Sling. Remember, we announced last week Sling's doing the free DVR, and you can pay for extra space if you want. But it's like you're running a TiVo, except Sling is your live channels and your DVR. And then TiVo has something called TiVo Plus channels. This has existed on TiVos already, but those channels will be there too. They're kind of like Pluto TV channels. Some of them are even the same things like TMZ, stuff like that. As well as the familiar grid guide for all of that. Then the TiVo Plus interface can show you stuff you like based on what it knows. And again, if you already use a TiVo for your over-the-air or your cable TV, you know how this works. It'll tell you where a show is no matter what the source is. Is it over the air? Is it on cable? Is it in Netflix? Is it on Hulu? Whatever you've got installed, it'll integrate that. And same goes for the TiVo Stream 4K. It will integrate not only Sling and the TiVo Plus channels, but partners for this dongle. That includes Netflix. Remember, Apple doesn't even integrate Netflix into its recommendation engine. TiVo's got Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Vudu, PBS, MLB.TV, WWE, the CW, YouTube, Pandora, Google Play. And when I was talking to Ted, he's like, these are the ones we can announce. He's like, there will be more. So keep an eye out for that. The dongle itself plugs into an HDMI port and supports Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision HDR. TiVo will sell the device for $50 for a limited time. If you get in early, you get it for $50. The final retail price will be $70. And TiVo hopes to strike some partnerships to bundle it with people who provide internet service. So let's say you sign up for, gigabit internet service from somebody. They might throw in TiVo Stream 4K for free. They want to do that sort of thing. They're also willing to embed the software in other devices the way they do the regular TiVo software. So if somebody else wants to make an Android TV, TiVo's willing to work with them and make the TiVo Stream 4K software the software on a NVIDIA Shield or something like that. That's not what they said, but I'm just throwing that out as an example. But I think this is super smart for TiVo to say, let's put out our own device, take advantage of the thing that we do well, the interface, and sell it at a reasonable price.
The price is really shocking to me. Even full price at $70, and you're basically getting an Android, a good Android TV box. Like that on its own is really good. Did they mention if you would still, because there is a subscription element to TiVo, right, Tom? Would you need the guide?
He did not mention anything about there being a subscription. So this is coming out of Sling TV. Basically, you're getting the guide info from Sling TV. So I don't think you have to pay TiVo for that.
Gotcha. I think because it's really cool when you I know on the Apple TV app, it'll do the same thing like Tom mentioned, where it'll just have watch next and it'll show you like, oh, Larry Sanders Show on HBO. Oh, The Good Place on Hulu. When that works, that feels really frictionless and smart. And are there any other services actually doing a watch next or an aggregate feature like that, Tom? I can't think of any other than Apple.
Roku is trying to do that within the Roku app, and Apple does it really well on the Apple TV. They have a what's next that you can have show up on the main screen, or you can go into the Apple TV app. But the what's next always shows you like, okay, of what you're watching, this is the one with the newest episode. Problem with Apple TV is they don't have Netflix, so it's kind of a coup for TiVo to get Netflix into that.
Yeah, Hammond, are you? Does this interest you at all? This TiVo 4K stream?
Yeah, we're a TiVo family still. We have one kind of minor cable subscription because it came with the phone and the internet. So we have an old TiVo box that I still love, and this idea of moving to Sling TV and moving away from that old TiVo box with the hard drive and the whole bit, this sounds brilliant. And for $70, I'm in. Point me where to go.
Now, did they mention, I know you mentioned that they talked about adding more partners as well as potentially embedding the software into other hardware. Have they talked about, because Drew Nielsen in the chat makes a very good point that it's useful if it works across multiple devices, including, say, phones or tablets. Have they talked about any sort of app?
Well, there is the TiVo app, but that's a little bit like saying, I would like Roku to work on my phones and apps. Well, it kind of can. You can have a Roku app that then controls your device. But what they're selling here is a device interface, not necessarily a service.
Gotcha.
If that makes any sense. So they're not trying to say we want to replace the Sling TV app on your phone. That's the phone's interface. That's up to the phone. They're saying we skinned an Android interface for an Android TV. So it's kind of asking a device to do something that's not what a device does. To say, well, I want this on my phone. It's like, well, if iOS will let TiVo skin it, then I guess you could. But a phone does way more than that. So I don't know if there's any sense of elegance to having the TiVo app be able to recommend your TV shows the way the Apple TV app does. I could see something there. And I didn't ask them about that. Yeah. So I don't know if there's any plans for that. But the big thing here is that they have a device, and this is the interface for the device. I didn't hear them pushing the idea of a service the way Apple TV is pushing the Apple TV interface.
Yeah. This seems almost like a coup, like to come out with a new hardware, it's seemingly a new way of interacting with TiVo as a brand. This kind of seems out of left field, Tom. I mean, it's a great surprise.
Yeah, I Richard Gunther who tipped me up to this at Digital Experience, and he's like, this is the thing that will get people in my family to cut the cord.
Yeah.
Because it's a familiar interface that they know, like you were saying, Hammond, like we already have this with cable, and it's dead simple. You plug it in, you buy your Sling TV subscription, and it makes things so much easier than when you have to cobble those subscriptions together yourself, because it's all on the device. And that's why I was saying this is really meant to be a device interface, not a service. You're saying like, hey, Dad, let me give you this TiVo Stream 4K. It'll give you all your shows in 4K on the TV you have and a familiar interface. And you just look for the show you want to watch and press, I want to watch that show. That's the promise here. Where TiVo makes money off this is saying, look how great this interface works on the device we sell. Gosh, wouldn't you like to have that on your device too? Philips, Channel Master, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The other thing that kind of holds true, though, is TiVo kind of invented this idea of time shifting. And the time shifting idea is now mutated into what we have now as streaming and on demand. And so for them to make this step is kind of reestablishing their toehold in this field, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, it's smart for them to leapfrog away from being a DVR service. Like, yeah, okay, Sling's going to do that. Let's just take what we're good at and put it on the new thing. So be interesting to see if this takes off. I don't expect it to immediately compete with Fire TV, much less Apple TV and Roku. But it could start to get some momentum if they can get it in the right distributors' hands, if they can get those ISPs to start including it. And gosh, that'd be really good for Sling TV, because Sling TV is having a hard time getting over the hump. They've kind of reached cruising altitude, and they really need to push it to the next level. That could be good for them as well. And I'm sure TiVo has a deal. I don't know this, but I'm sure TiVo has a deal where they get a cut of every subscriber that subscribes through the Stream 4K. So that's going to help TiVo too, if that's true.
I could just
let's
imagine
talk a little bit
in a couple of years, like a TCL TV, but now it's like 4K TV with TiVo.
With TiVo built in. Yeah,
built in.
absolutely. Wow. Plex is looking into offering subscriptions through its service, similar to how Apple TV and Roku offer subscription add-ons. This is kind of like what Prime Video does, where you have the one bill, the one app, but you can add CBS All Access, Showtime, HBO, etc. Plex wants to do that too. For services like Netflix that want to own the whole customer relationship themselves, Plex is exploring deep linking to let Plex users search and find shows from the service within Plex, then send them out to the third-party app to watch them. So they're trying to get past the problem Apple has had by saying, well, we'll just link into Netflix from within Plex app, and then we don't have to have a deal. Plex says they would fill in any gaps by also integrating offerings from stores like Vudu or Google Play, where you can rent or buy your movies and TV shows. They would show up in this service as well. Plex says it wants to reach a critical mass of content in its free ad-supported services first, though, before it does any of this kind of deep linking stuff. So they're going to keep pushing that free ad-supported service and get as many users on board for that, work out the kinks on that, and then expand it. Sticking deals for ad-supported content has led to some opportunities to strike deals for subscription content as well. And I think they want to prove that their free streaming deals are valuable, and then they can go to those partners and say, hey, what if we did a deal on your other stuff? Plex says it's optimistic about having 15 to 20 subscription channels eventually, and could launch the first ones this year if all goes well.
These are becoming a commodity, Tom, right? This is the fifth or sixth operator that said, hey, do you want to get HBO through us now?
Yeah.
Well,
because one of the complaints is, I don't want to have to manage a bunch of subscriptions. And one of the answers is, well, what if you could just pick your services and it's all part of one bill and you don't have to pay 15 different people? Some people, that's good enough.
Wow.
That's kind of a la carte.
I was going to say, but isn't that service kind of already there? It's called cable.
Well, no, because what cable does is says you can have these 150 channels or these 350 channels, and then you pay extra for HBO, Showtime, etc.
Okay.
And what Prime Video, what Plex are saying is, you have our service, and our service is our service, and it's this price, and you get it free with shipping if you're Amazon, or you get it part of your Plex Pass, which you're paying for other things, but we'll let you add channels on top of that too, and that simplifies your bill.
Okay. All right.
Does this feel too out of character to you, Tom, for Plex? I mean, I think of Plex and I think of running the home server and transcoding and then streaming, across the network. I know that they just had all the ad-supported VOD stuff. This feels like really quickly jumping into more monetization strategies for what otherwise seemed like a pretty complete consumer product.
Well, look at XBMC and what it has now. Now I'm blanking on what it changed its name to. It's not
Kodi.
XBMC anymore, but Kodi. Yeah. Look at Kodi and then look at Plex. They both came from the same source code. What Plex has been very good about is saying, we're not going to be satisfied to stay being what we are. We want to anticipate what our user base would like next. We don't want to go too far afield and have them say, you're losing the plot, but we don't want to stay constant, because then they will outgrow us and move to something else. And so what I admire about Plex is they've been very good at growing smartly. They haven't taken over the lead from anybody else, but they also haven't gone away. They haven't faded into the background, and that's because they do stuff like this. And they make bets that say, you know what, I bet the next feature that our audience is going to crave is this. Let's add that. And this feels like that to me. Like, we don't know that this is the feature that's going to keep everybody in the Plex universe and add a few more. But if they're right, and they keep doing that, I feel like that's how Plex continues to grow until suddenly you're like, wow, everybody has Plex suddenly because they just made the features that everybody wanted.
Yeah. And even the tone of their messaging is interesting in terms of them saying, oh, you know, we might do this one feature in front of the other, like being very cognizant of how their community is going to react to these different features and prioritizing it based on some of that. You really don't hear that from these operators. It's usually just like, here's our roadmap, bang, bang, bang. But to hear you say that, I suddenly went from feeling like, well, that feels very wishy-washy in terms of when stuff is going to come out to maybe to being a little more fluid with what they prioritize.
Yeah, it's the difference, I think, between trying to satisfy your shareholders while talking to your customers and just talking to your customers. And I kind of get the idea. I don't know this, that Plex is much more user focused than some other companies. A couple of software notes here. The Apple TV app will arrive on LG, Sony, and Vizio TVs later this year. That was all announced last week. We knew the Apple TV app would keep arriving on more and more hardware, so that's not a shocker. But if you were looking at your Samsung friend who had an Apple TV app and you're real jealous because you have Vizio or Sony or LG, well, you're going to get it too. As we mentioned last week, I think LG is only back to 2018. I'm not sure how backwards compatible Sony and Vizio will be, but it's still coming later this year. And this is an interesting one. CBS All Access has struck a deal as part of its broadcast carriage agreement with Comcast to put CBS All Access app on the Xfinity X1 and Xfinity Flex cable set-top boxes.
Wow, directly on the cable box.
Yeah.
Wow. Now,
something Netflix has been doing for a few years now. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that be a bargaining chip. Like, well, we'll give you a better deal on carriage of our main network if you put our app on your box.
But this doesn't mean that Xfinity customers will just get a subscription to All Access. This is only if they have the service.
Yeah. But again, when they pay for it, it goes through the Comcast bill, so it simplifies the billing.
Has anybody on the panel used an Apple TV app not on an Apple device?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Have you enjoyed that experience? Does it work as expected?
I think it's great. We have it on our Roku Ultra upstairs, and it's really quite nice, and it works great. The kids love it. I love it. It's exactly what I expect it to be, and it does everything it would do natively on an Apple device.
Cool. Yeah, I know.
It freaks me out, Bryce, because I have my Roku remote in my hand, but I have the Apple interface on the screen, and then I press the Roku buttons and things on the Apple happen, and I get this weird cognitive dissonance.
It feels.
I remember you posted that video on Twitter of you doing that.
Yeah.
If anybody else out there has used an Apple TV app on a non-Apple device, why don't you write into the show, cordkillers@gmail.com.
Yeah, and I think it's Drew Nielsen. Drew Nielsen killing it in the chat room today points out that there is an Apple ad looking to hire a developer of Universal Windows apps, UWP apps. And so the speculation is that's Apple wanting to get an Apple TV app and maybe Apple Music on Windows and possibly the Xbox, because UWP runs on both.
Makes sense.
All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
It's all about location.
Under surveillance.
Man, what a week for Brian to be out. The Lock and Key trailer came out for the Lock and Key series coming to Netflix, of course, based on the Joe Hill comic. That arrives on Netflix February 7th. Bryce, did you watch this?
I did. This was I initially started watching this trailer when it first came out a few days ago, and I only got it to a few seconds of it because I thought kids in a house, and it'll probably send them to like Narnia or something, and it'll be that sort of movie. But watching the full trailer, it was not what I expected. It seems really interesting. Hammond, what about you?
I'm thrilled about this. I'm really looking forward to this show. It's one of the first shows in a long time on Netflix that I've been super jazzed about, kind of catching and making sure I watch like day and date kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited about this myself. I mean, Brian and I both have made no secret of the fact that we're fans of the graphic novel. I got turned on to the graphic novel because of the constant recommendation from Brian, and it did not disappoint. This trailer, though, makes it look a little more Harry Potter-y than I would have expected, and I can't tell if that's just trailer marketing of like, well, if we make it look like this, then it'll draw people in, and when they find out that it's different, by then they'll be hooked. Or if I hope they didn't turn it into a. I mean, it doesn't look like they dumbed it down at all. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's in there, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they're going there for sure. They're going to all the parts of the story, but it looked like they were trying to trick us into thinking it was something it was not. And I hope that's just trailer marketing.
It does kind of look like if you squint at it just right, it does kind of look like a CW show almost. It looks like an expensive CW show. Even to the point of like they're in like this mall and there's all the weird party lights for a shot.
Man, we're just disaffected kids in a magic house. This magic adventure is going to be so fun. It's kind of the feeling at first. Then if you know the graphic novel, you see a couple things, you're like, that's definitely not going to be fun for them. But yeah, I hope they go all the places that the graphic novel goes. Right, Hammond?
Actually, I've never read the graphic novel. I would like to read that before it comes out. I think I need to do some digging.
Yeah, hard to say. So, Brian always advocates read after because it can only add more. But in this case, I wonder. Anyway, on to another trailer. Sony released a trailer for Morbius. This is a Marvel-based character. It is not a Marvel Studios, though. This is Sony using their deal with Marvel to use certain characters to make their own movie. Stars Jared Leto as the Marvel villain from the Spider-Man universe, and it's coming this summer. Did you guys watch this?
I did. I'm reticent to say much other than that I watched it.
Yeah, I don't.
Is that Mama taught Hammond? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Maybe. I don't know. I frankly, I have a hard time with Leto as an actor, and this just felt odd to me.
Yeah, I don't quite know if I'm on board yet for Sony doing a dark Marvel character again. I mean, after Venom, it feels.
They say in the trailer from the makers of Venom.
Well, the problem is that Venom didn't know what it was supposed to be. Was it supposed to be an action movie? Was it kind of scary? Or was it a comedy? And they kept jamming different things in. And so you kind of walked away not knowing what you were supposed to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And
Venom is one of those movies where the critics trashed it harder than the fans, though.
Yeah.
So
I'm just wondering, were we looking for a Morbius movie in our lives?
It wasn't the Morbius movie you asked for. It was the Morbius movie you needed.
They jammed down our throats unwillingly.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I definitely wasn't asking for a Morbius movie. Morbius is kind of a weird character. I'm not very familiar with him. I know he gets his powers from bats and is kind of vampire-like, or pretty much a vampire, essentially.
I mean, on paper, a vampire superhero should make $2 billion, right?
Right, because vampire, right?
And yeah.
And they also threw in Michael Keaton at the very end of this. Michael Keaton, of course, played the Vulture in Spider-Man. This is not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of which Spider-Man is. So I don't know if this is just kind of a loose crossover connection, or if they're going to have Michael Keaton play something entirely different. I have no idea.
He's going to play that character, the Hawkman, that he did in
Birdman.
Birdman.
Yeah, it's going to be a Birdman crossover. You're absolutely right. That's the only thing it can be. In related news, Alex Kurtzman said the 3 Star Trek shows, Discovery, Picard, and Lower Decks, will not have linked storylines, though they will happen in the same universe. So here we go with another extended universe, and yet loose connections. No commitment on what will happen with the movies now that Paramount and CBS are back under the same company again. But of course, Alex Kurtzman, who now runs all the Star Trek projects for CBS, did work on the Paramount movies along with J.J. Abrams. So I think they're trying to figure that. I get the sense that they have ideas, but they haven't nailed down which one of them they're going to go with. But we're going to get Star Trek all made by the same company now, which is exciting.
I don't have much of a Star Trek lineage. Have there been many direct crossovers or many direct links between properties? Because it did seem like some of the series
has been direct. Next Generation was a direct sequel to Star Trek, the original series. The original series movies were direct sequels to the original series. The Next Generation movies were direct sequels to the Next Generation. Deep Space Nine took place in the same universe as Next Generation at the same time. So did Voyager. Like, everything has been deeply connected up until they made the last Next Generation movie. And then they made the Star Trek movies with J.J. Abrams, which were an alternate universe. And then they made Discovery, which is a prequel, kind of like Enterprise. I totally forgot about Enterprise, which takes place in the same universe as the originals.
How could you forget about Enterprise?
Yeah, I know. I apologize to Scott Bakula. So Enterprise and Discovery both take place before the original series, but are in that universe with the original series and Next Generation. Picard takes place in the same universe as the Next Generation. So it's weird to think that they're going to have Discovery, Picard, and Lower Decks not crossover. But I guess they just want to keep them kind of free and clear. And the timelines for at least Discovery and Picard are certainly far away from each other.
Yeah.
It does make sense to try to hedge their bets and try to hopefully create new stories, not get stuck in kind of what maybe another star named property is having some issues with in terms of being bogged down.
Star Search, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
Star Search
is,
5, they really want
Star
to try
Search, the Rise of McMahon Walker.
That's right. They don't want to maybe just get too bogged down in legacy stories, and I think I think it makes sense to try and see, can we make new seeds?
Well, and what we've seen from the Picard trailers is that they're going to bring characters from the Next Generation and Voyager into the story, but it looks like they're going to try to tell an entirely new story. They're not going to just play to those original characters' storylines. So it makes sense that they want to give themselves that room.
Yeah.
HBO is working on a limited series based on the film Parasite. We were mentioning Parasite earlier during the Oscar noms. Parasite director Bong Joon-ho is in talks to be an executive producer. No word on what take the series would have in relation to the movie, though he would work with Adam McKay, who is working on the very popular and successful Succession. In fact, in a press conference about the Oscar nominations, Bong said, quote, "With Parasite, while I was writing the script, I had so many more ideas I couldn't convey into the 2-hour running time of the film. I knew that if I had a longer running time, I would be able to tell these stories, and that's what I plan to talk about with Adam pretty soon."
So this, the original Variety article questions this. Do we think that this is going to be an English language adaptation of the movie, or is this going to be something even further away from that story?
Yeah, whether it's in English or Korean, I don't think they've decided.
Oh, I guess that's a good point.
What Bong was saying in his Deadline interview was that this is not going to be a retelling of the original movie. It's going to be stories around that original movie that he couldn't fit into that movie. And that seems like an anthology series to me.
Yeah, like a character piece, day in the life sort of idea. That would be smart, especially given sort of almost the heisty nature of Parasite, where each character of that family has their own sort of scheme going on. That makes sense.
And also, you could bring in other people to do directing on those as well later on down the road. And anthology is the best way to do that, where you get the same world, same storylines, maybe same concept, but from different points of view.
And CJ Entertainment, a Korean production company, is in on this. So I imagine there might be some co-marketing of this in both the Korean and the U.S. markets and other HBO markets. I'm excited about this. Having Adam McKay on board and Bong Joon-ho's storytelling ability teamed up, this could be better than the original film. They might just come up with something that's in fact a linear story. It's not an anthology that just runs with those same themes, but with different characters even. All right. Former Firefly showrunner Tim Minear tweeted a photo from the last day of shooting on Firefly while Fox Entertainment, this is the broadcast network, not the Disney-owned parts of Fox. This is the part of Fox that Disney didn't buy. He tweeted this picture while Fox Entertainment's president, Michael Thorne, was speaking to the Television Critics Association. That's not a mistake. And one of the critics took the bait and asked Thorne about it. And Thorne said, and I quote, "The macro answer is anytime we look at one of our classic titles, if there's a way to reinvent it for today so it's as resonant now as the original was and is to the fans, we're wide open. In this crowded marketplace, if you can start with some kind of brand awareness and IP that has vocal support, and in this case, a crazy, passionate love for it, you're ahead of the game." Now, Tim Minear, currently doing 911 and a spinoff called 911 Lone Star. So they're not going to pull him in on this anytime soon. But we did also get Thorne talking about the fact that Orville was apparently the only space show they could afford to have at one time. But now that Orville has been moved to Hulu, that gives them a space show slot in the schedule. So maybe they could do some kind of Firefly thing.
So can I bring up something in the wording that I find interesting?
Yeah.
They said it's one of their classic titles. It lasted for one season before they unceremoniously ditched it. They can't call it a classic. I think it's a classic. You think it's a classic.
You're saying that's our word?
But
You
they
can't
didn't
use
treat
it?
like a series.
Well,
Yes,
Michael
kinda.
Thorne isn't the one who canceled it. Maybe Michael Thorne feels just the same as we do.
Okay, I'll give you that. But it
It's
was
a
just
cult
it's
classic.
strange.
They put the classic in cult classic.
It's like Coke Classic.
Oh, yeah. And that's the good
They
one.
tried to make a new Firefly, Serenity, and it didn't catch on. So
Do you think that a Firefly revival, if they didn't get the cast, who are all busy working on new stuff now, would even be accepted? I mean, it seemed like the reason you wouldn't have done this is because you can't do it the way people would like to see it.
Yeah, this is a hard one, right? Because there's certainly precedent for taking an older property and pulling out a couple of characters. Look at Frasier, right?
Yeah.
You know, Frasier was super successful, even though it just had Frasier from Cheers. They pulled that character out and built a successful property around him. The problem is the crew is, for me, what makes Firefly. So if you have to build up a new crew, even if it's around one or two of the existing characters, that's tough. That's tough. Now, this is a minor, vague spoiler for anyone who's never seen Firefly, but there's a couple of those crew members you can't bring back because of the way the story went. So there's that. You're never going to get the original cast fully reassembled and have it forward in time. You'd have to go back into the story to do that.
Yeah. And I mean,
and they're all old now.
These shows are too wildly different, but the situations are the same with Arrested Development, which came back with trying to piece together stuff with the cast with these wildly different schedules, try to jump forward in time. And ultimately that I think was creatively unsuccessful. I think just those fourth and fifth seasons are mediocre at its peak.
It all depends on the execution, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at Picard when I say this, it may be possible to just take one person, build a great story around them, pull in a few carefully integrated, justified cameos, and make a great property. I mean, we still have to wait to see on Picard, but it's looking good so far from what we know. And I guess you could do the same thing with Firefly. Maybe it's just a Malcolm Reynolds on his own thing.
I think that would be the hardest one, is keeping
telling
Reynolds.
stories at a bar.
Or he's just flying with a new crew. Over time he's had to replace people. Yeah, but then you got to build up that crew, that chemistry among the crew again. Yeah. It's tough. All right, let's go over some other notes. HBO announced Westworld will return for its third season March 15th. We got a date now, March 15th. There's a trailer out for Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet. That's the show coming to Apple TV Plus with Rob McElhenney and Charlie Day as the executive producers. That is arriving February 7th on Apple TV Plus. Rob McElhenney also plays the head of the game company who takes all the credit. Mark Hamill will guest star in the second season of What We Do in the Shadows. That's good news, but the bad news is Taika Waititi will not be back to direct any episodes. Jermaine Clement is running the show, so it's in good hands. That one returns April 15th. FX also announced Fargo comes back on FX April 19th. Archer comes back to FX May 6th. And all the FX shows premiering on FX this spring will be showing up on Hulu the next day. So if you have a Hulu subscription, you'll be getting them. You'll just get them a day after everybody who has FX. Rick and Morty co-creator Justin Roiland will co-create a stop-motion animation show for Quibi called Gloop World. Showtime made several announcements, including the renewals of the L Word Generation Q and Work in Progress. They'll both get second seasons. CBS had its TCA an event, said it's committed to a series based on the character of Clarice from Silence of the Lambs. Alex Kurtzman and Jenny Lumet set to run that show. CBS says it was pleased with the results of running episodes of its all-access show The Good Fight on its over-the-air stations this past summer, but it doesn't have any plans to repeat that experiment yet. CBS will launch new versions of Mr. Magoo, George of the Jungle, and Lassie on CBS All Access, and those start this week, January 17th. And finally, CBS is going to bring 3 more primetime celebrity specials of The Price is Right to its over-the-air channel since the last 2. They did one with Seth Rogen and one with the cast of SEAL Team, were rating successes.
Tom, I saw the Westworld date announcement pop up on my YouTube subscription feed, March 15, and I was shocked because I had forgotten there was a second season. I know I watched it.
But when? Yeah.
I watched it. I enjoyed it. It was a good season, but
right.
It seems like they have to change this. That the show is going to have to change so much in this 3rd season that like the date announcement didn't have really any footage and. We've seen a trailer for season 3, right?
Because it's got
Aaron Paul.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
but it's only different.
And it all seems to take place outside the parks.
Yeah,
at least the trailer stuff did.
I'm excited about it, but also I forgot about Westworld in a big way. Hammond, did you watch any of Westworld?
I watched season 1, and I have not watched season 2 yet.
Season 1's, we've talked on this show a lot about because we were watching those week over week, and I don't know that any of us have actually gone back and binged the show now that it's all available.
Haven't.
But we thought that might be a better way to experience what is an all right show.
All right, folks, let's get back to talking about things we have watched. Hammond, what's been catching your eyeballs?
So I've gotten Disney Plus, as pretty much everybody did. And I've been spending a lot of time watching that Imagineers series that they put together. Mm-hmm. The Imagineering, the documentary series about the Imagineering.
I've heard great things about that.
It is absolutely amazing. And step back, it is an ad for Disney from the beginning to end. It's just a giant, well-crafted ad for Disney. But it's really, really well done, and I forgive it for being the ad because they give you stories and information that you didn't have, and they don't always pander to the best sides of every story. They do give some gritty details over things, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's my wife's watched it. I've watched it. The kids have watched it. It's really, really good, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, we even got an email a few weeks back.
So many good things about it.
Yeah, about how good it is. So that's
and people say you can just kind of jump in on any episode. You don't have to watch them in the order.
No, you don't have to watch them in any order. And there are things I learned, like I'd totally forgotten they built the Shanghai Disney, and I totally spaced the idea of the Hong Kong Disney. So going back and seeing how they struggled and the efforts they put into putting those things together and getting them built and opened was really interesting. So yeah, it's great as individual episodes, but you do watch in order. There's a flow to it that kind of follows through and does make it kind of a cohesive story.
Bryce, what about you? Anything caught your eye this week?
Well, they've got. I know I did. Did we actually do a spoiler in time for the Young Pope?
Yes, we did
when it came back out. So
this is not the Two Popes, which is Oscar nominated. This is the Young Pope with Jude Law, right?
With Jude Law, right?
Okay.
It was in 2016 on HBO, and I really enjoyed the season. So I restarted watching it because they have a new follow-up. It's not season 2 of The Young Pope. It's a new series called The New Pope, where there are, turns out, 2 popes, Tom. Stop me if you've heard this one before. There are 2 popes in
so
the
confusing.
New Pope. It's
so
crazy.
we have the 2 popes, which is totally unrelated.
Right.
We have the Young Pope, which is related, but not a prequel. And then we have the New Pope, which is unrelated to the 2 popes, but has 2 popes in it.
That's right. It's a big plot point.
Pope Classic.
Pope Classic. That's right. But I just restarted watching The Young Pope on HBO because I really did enjoy it, and his like very like brusque and weird character, and so I'm excited about what they do with the new Pope, because they sort of leave on a big cliffhanger.
I'm a big fan of Pope Zero. Strike It Rich.
Diet Pope is my favorite.
Yeah.
Adrian said
Cherry Pope.
Cherry Pope Zero. That's right.
Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
I watched 1917, as I mentioned, and it is definitely the best movie I've seen this year because it's 13 days old. But it's in the running for being the best movie I will see this year.
Wow.
If you don't know, the technical trick is that it looks as if it's all one shot. Now, they didn't shoot it all in one shot, but there are several very long shots that they string together. And the way they did the edits was, in the turn from one perspective to another, because you're following two people down a trench and the camera will turn so that you can see them. You'll see the wall for a second and you'll be like, oh, okay, that must be where they cut, because you can fix on the wall and then carry on from there. But it's seamless. It really does look like it's all one shot. And the story is about two lance corporals in the British Army in 1917 being asked to run an emergency message through no man's land across enemy lines to stop an attack that the British Army in a different location is planning, because they have intelligence that they would be falling into a trap and everyone would get massacred. They have aerial, this is, back before radio was very reliable. They certainly don't have the communications they have now. And the lines are down, so they can't get the message. They have to run it. And you're following these two lance corporals as they run to try to get this message. And they, the general, played by Colin Firth, says like, oh yeah, the Germans pulled back, you'll be fine. And it's like, well, did they really? And of course, it takes off from there. But it feels like a very accurate telling of a World War I story. We don't get World War I stories that often. It's a great way to tell a World War I story with all those things you've heard about the burnt out trees and the dirty trenches and the conditions, without having to just dwell on that and having a purpose for these characters. And I thought they did a great job of making it feel like you are in a war, and the reactions of people when you finally find them and like, I have to get this message, is not the dramatic, 1950s war picture of like, well, then we'll help you. It's like, oh, okay, well, good luck with that, buddy. We got our own problems. And even when he delivers the message, the reception he gets is not a joyous, triumphant, you've saved the day. It's all very muted, as you would expect in wartime.
I have seen trailers for this movie and had no idea about any of this. I found out about the one shot thing over the weekend and was shocked that was in the movie, and I had not. They don't. It's I know it's hard to sell someone on that. It's hard to be like, that's not a feature point anyone cares
It's
about.
not a reason. Yeah.
Right. But like even the story, I think you did a very good job of selling me on the story than any trailer I've seen for it. Very cool.
And you have like I said, Colin Firth is in it, Richard Madden, Game of Thrones. In fact, Richard Madden and Tommen, the kid who played Tommen, is one of the two lance corporals. So they have a scene together.
Oh,
and you're like,
fun.
oh, monster. Benedict Cumberbatch is in it. But they have these small parts. They're playing these very important people, but because you're following the lance corporals, you don't spend a lot of time with them, and it's kind of amazing.
Wow.
What should we be on the lookout for, Bryce?
Well, Tom, you indulged me a little bit over the weekend.
I did.
We were thinking of what we wanted to talk about on Spoilerin Time because Brian's not here and a bunch of shows are still off the air. And I had seen some hubbub about a new Netflix reality competition show called The Circle. And so this is they bill it as a social media competition show where 8 people are living in this apartment complex, but the only way that they are in touch with each other is over this social network called The Circle, which is just a voice-activated TV that they have in their room. And so they play games and they talk to each other over the social network and write messages. And that's how they decide who they want to kick off or not. And so you have some people who are catfishing or using better photos or using fake photos of themselves. I think this show is fine. It feels very much like a Big Brother type show where you just leave people who are very sort of who are very photogenic and just let them be themselves for a while. I also just found the concept maybe a little too abstract. It's not like Survivor. I know what they're trying to do in Survivor, which is like live on an island. I don't entirely. I've watched 2 episodes of this, and I still don't exactly know what or why anyone is voting on anything.
Well, the one thing I will say is that is true to life. Right? Like you kind of don't know what makes something popular on a social network. So I kind of found that meta part of it intriguing.
Hammond, have you seen this or heard about this?
Where is this found? This is the first time I'm of this.
This is Netflix. This is now on Netflix.
I'm gonna have to spend some time.
Yeah. That
listen,
it feels
know
like
what you're getting into. If you like Real Housewives, Jersey Shore, Big Brother, that's the level of this, right?
Okay.
Like
some of that I'm okay with in a shorter duration. I will give this a shot because Bryce has given it a shot.
Yeah, in fact, Tom and I will talk a little bit more about this in Spoilerin time this evening. But I bring it up not because I think it's great, but because I know that there are a lot of people who like shows like this. I think it is surprisingly well put together. I have a lot of very technical questions about how they emulate this definitely not real, not...
Oh, there's definitely a production assistant answering everything. There's no technology behind the assistant. And
so I watch it and I have a lot of questions, and not in the traditional way that a story would ask me. But that's The Circle. It's on Netflix. I think they're still putting out episodes weekly on some sort of schedule, but I don't know if it's in like a couple of episodes every week or just one a week. But look for it on Netflix.
Well, if you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us, folks. We want to hear what you think we should be on the lookout for. You got a good one we haven't talked about? Cordkillers@gmail.com. Shoot us that email right now.
Shoot us.
Folks, I do a lot of stuff. TomMerritt.com is the place to find it. I have all kinds of things going on there, including my podcast and my writing. And there's even a newsletter where I can just send you a note directly and you can respond to it, freetomnewsletter.com. But I wouldn't be on this show talking to you right now if Bryce didn't have a computer for me to stream through at the Modern Rogue headquarters there in Austin, Texas.
That's right.
And that computer wouldn't exist if it wasn't provided by Doghouse Systems. And so in order to pay Doghouse Systems back, Brian agreed to say, hey, we'll get a bunch of people to buy Doghouse Systems in return. And to encourage you to take part in that, you're helping Brian pay Doghouse Systems back for all the equipment they gave him.
That's right.
But also, you can get a free 250 gigabyte solid state drive if you use the promo code ROGUE. So that's what you need to do. Show some support by going to doghousesystems.com/V/rogue. Get an excellent Doghouse Systems machine. I've used them before. They're great. And you get a free 250 gigabyte solid state drive when you use the promo code ROGUE.
It's hard to beat free.
Yeah. doghousesystems.com/V/rogue. Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines.
Let's do these kind of quick. At CES, Quibi announced more details on the mobile short video service it's planning to launch this year. A feature called Turnstile will let viewers watch content in portrait or landscape mode. Now, before you mock this, I think this might be kind of genius. It keeps significant content in the frame, no matter how you hold your phone, so you never see black bars on your device. And in fact, in some shows, flipping the orientation gives you different content. They give an example, a show called Wireless is a thriller that will show the main character's phone screen when you look at it on portrait and show you the action when you look at it on landscape. Quibi says it'll have 35 movies. Of course, the movies on Quibi are told in multiple 7 to 10 minute chapters, but it's going to have 35 movies and 25 daily essential news and weather type shows at launch. That launch, if you remember, is April 6th for $5 a month or $8 a month without ads. Hammond, are you convinced yet?
No.
I'm always for more
Short.
tools, though, for filmmakers. More tools is better.
I'm for that too. I don't know if I need something else to pull my time right now.
Warner Media talked about HBO Max some more at CES last week. They promised to have a better interface, criticizing the endless scroll of competitors, and talked about a swipe mobile interface. HBO Max will cost $15 a month when it arrives in May. Tom, did I have deja vu, but didn't they show off the interface just a few weeks ago?
Yeah, they've showed it off a couple of times.
And it looks pretty
the
traditional.
Latest. Yeah, what they're saying is they're going to show you the things you want to watch faster, so you won't be like Netflix where you're just scrolling forever looking for something to watch. Kind of have to experience in person for that to really click whether they're successful or not.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Yeah.
I kind of like the scroll too. I just adding it to my list is sometimes better than watching the stuff. I don't know.
ComScore estimates the box office revenue for movies and worldwide hit $42.5 billion. That's a new global record. Boosted by a record $30 billion internationally. Domestic box office revenue is estimated to have dropped 4%. But overall, worldwide, studios doing great. All studio motion picture divisions are estimated to be profitable. Not all of them saw increases. In fact, Disney is the one that saw the big increase. But 2020 is going to be different. No Star Wars, no Avengers. So it's not going to be as Disney dominated. There will be Wonder Woman 1984, Top Gun Maverick, James Bond in No Time to Die, Black Widow, Fast Furious 9. So there's big franchises coming, but they're from a wider variety of studios this year.
I mean, those are all, that's a good list of movies, or I guess sequels. You listed a lot of good sequels, Tom.
Well, I mean, yeah, I sure did. But those are the ones that are expected to make the most money. So blame yourselves.
Hammond, anything, any stars on that list?
I'm actually really looking forward to the James Bond and the Wonder Woman. And you know what? I'm always down for a good Fast and Furious film.
I might have to. I've long promised myself I would do a Fast and Furious movie binge. Maybe this is the year.
Pretend I'm dumb about Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Verizon Fios announced it will no longer offer bundles of internet and TV services and will no longer require contracts to purchase its service. You just sign up, pay for what you want. Fios will offer 3 internet levels from $40 to $80 a month, with your speeds starting at 100 megabits per second at $40 on up to gigabit service for $80 a month. TV packages will run $50 to $90 a month, depending on the channels. They'll also sell you YouTube TV for $50 a month as part of your bill if you want to bundle that in yourself, but it's not a discount. You just add it if you want. Verizon says there will be no additional fees, only taxes. So there's no like local sports fee or DVR usage fee. You can also add home phone for $20 a month. And if you want extra support beyond the normal business hours, you can get 24/7 support if you're willing to pay $15 a month extra.
Sounds good on paper, but I wonder, we're so used to quote unquote jacking up prices, which is a lot of times promotional pricing ending. So I wonder if this is a stable price, given that we see all the other over the top TV services.
Verizon is like pulling their hair out listening to you right now. They're like, that's the point.
I know.
No contract, no fees. This is how much you pay. That's it. I mean, yeah, eventually they may raise their price, but the point is that there is no temporary discount here.
Yeah, and it's definitely lower than what my parents pay for Verizon. AT&T Now's app has been pulled from Roku since the companies cannot agree on a new contract. So if you have the app installed, do not delete it because you can still use it. But even if you already subscribe to AT&T Now, you can no longer install the AT&T Now app on Roku. Tom, this doesn't make any sense.
It's the new CBS has been blacked out on Dish for the modern generation.
Yeah, but it's an app that's what's crazy to me is I kind of thought they funneled everyone into one process and you couldn't make a deal like that where you need a...
See, this is why Apple says it's 30% and that's it. And you can't do your own sales because it's the same for everybody. There's no separate deals, but Roku does do separate deals and that can lead to complications like this.
Wow. Merry Christmas to everyone who got a Roku.
Well, I mean, to be fair, how many of them really were dying to get AT&T now. I think this might hurt AT&T more than it hurts Roku, to be honest. Speaking of AT&T, the Audience Network, that used to be a DirecTV house channel. It used to be called Channel 101 or even Freeview if you go way back. It's going to become a new thing again. In its fourth generation, it will be known as the HBO Max Preview Channel and will show things from HBO Max to get you to subscribe to HBO Max.
Don't they have unlimited channel space? This thing must be losing money butt over elbows.
Well,
for them.
This is the house channel on AT&T's DirecTV and cable services. And my guess is they were spending money on original content. And somebody came in and said, shouldn't we spend money on original content for HBO Max? Yeah. And they're like, yeah, but then what do we do with the Audience channel? And they said, well, let's just make it an HBO Max preview channel. And the meeting was ended.
Well, they first had to explain what the Audience channel was.
Yes.
So basically, it's like that channel you turn on. You first get to a hotel and you turn it on, and it just shows ads over all.
No, I mean
they
Audience
content.
Network isn't that now. Audience Network has original shows, has some fairly popular original shows, but they're all in their last season now because it's going to become the HBO Max Preview channel, which does sound like that hotel channel, Hammond. My guess is it will show you full episodes of HBO Max shows.
Yeah. I did like that when asked about what they would do with all the content that they make for Audience Network, they said, oh, we'll do. We don't know. Don't ask me. We don't know. We'll do something with it later.
We don't want to say it'll go to HBO Max because we want to negotiate a new deal with all the production companies that make that stuff. Yeah.
It ended up on archive.org sometime.
Yeah.
Sure.
And finally, sports streaming service DAZN. Is that right? DAZN?
DAZN.
Oh, God. I would have. DAZN reports a 98% rise in streaming hours in 2019 to 507 million. 62% of total viewership was for soccer. Baseball was the number 2 sport, followed by motorsports, NFL, and boxing. The December fight between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr. was the most viewed event of the year. DAZN operates in Japan, Germany, Brazil, the U.S., and Canada.
Obviously, they don't have NFL here in the U.S., but they would like to. Maybe they can get that Thursday night digital deal away from Amazon or something. DAZN on the rise, though. And don't feel bad. I called it DAZN the first like 5 times I ever referred to it before I found out what it was really called. It seems to be on the rise, though. It's run by a former ESPN exec. Oh. They're snapping up a lot of good rights. It's much more popular outside the U.S., where they can get rights to a bunch of international sports.
Yeah, it sounded like that's how they host NFL internationally.
Yeah,
DAZN.
Exactly. They bring a lot of U.S. sports internationally. They have some international sports that they bring here into the U.S., but they're fighting a more sophisticated battle with Fox and Fubi and a bunch of others there. So, but yeah, looks like DAZN is on the rise. So
here we go.
There you go. Let's get to some dispatches from the front. Got a letter from John about subscription management saying, howdy, thank you for the great shows. A couple of times you and your Gus have talked about forgetting about subscriptions. I really like subscribing through the Apple Store because all those subscriptions are in one place and I get notifications when they renew. I'm disappointed when a service will not let me use the store. So there you go. Backing up what you were saying earlier, Bryce.
Yeah, and we just talked about the agreements, right? This is why Apple wants a standardized cut, because they can have these little conveniences like that. We also had a letter from Sean. Sean had a concern about Disney Plus in a recent news item. Sean wrote, I assure this crossed your Cordkillers signal wire. He linked to a Polygon article mentioning that a number of classic Disney films like Home Alone 1 and 2, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Dr. Dolittle had disappeared from Disney Plus. Sean continues, I, for one, enjoyed watching all of the non-impeached cast members of Home Alone 2 prior to Christmas. I also wanted to watch the Mighty Duck trilogy. Disney Plus, I guess Mighty Duck trilogy is just not on Disney Plus yet. Disney gave dates for when they're coming. I think D3 will lag 6 months behind 1 and 2. Fortunately, HBO saved the day. I can't help but think the 3 years prepaid offer and all the free year or prepay for a year offers were used to get people on board before we all understood how the service worked. All the reporting I heard ahead of time was that movies would gradually come into the fold with no mention of anything leaving. Thanks, Sean.
I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe Disney didn't talk about things leaving, but I'm not sure I blame them because I know that's how it works. Things leave Netflix all the time, and it makes headlines all the time, and new things come into Netflix. And that's the way all these services work, is you will have stuff in there. They made a big deal about the vault stuff never going away. And maybe that's what's confusing people, because they own the vault stuff. They don't give it to anybody. In fact, they don't even let theaters show the vault stuff. So that stuff is going to be on Disney Plus. And if they took that stuff away, I would have my nose bent out of shape. Right. But they did make a note that, like, yeah, we don't have all the Marvel films. We'll get them eventually because Netflix had them. So they talked about not having some stuff, and they are also adding stuff as it goes along. So I can't be too mad at them.
This is something that, especially by the end of that third year, will iron out as the rest of these old agreements lapse, and they can finally just decide to hold on to this content instead of giving it out to Netflix or HBO or Starz or whoever is getting these Disney movies.
Yeah. And I mean, if The Mandalorian were to go away, I'd be upset. But, you know, some of the movies, we know how that works. We don't get mad when a movie that was playing on FX is no longer on FX this month, and next month it's on AMC. Like, we know that's how that works. So we just kind of got to get used to that, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Hammond Chamberlain, for joining us. As I mentioned, Hammond does a world of amazing podcasts. What do you got going on these days?
Well, Top Podcasting Idol, Next Top Podcaster, is on hiatus for waiting for season 3 to get ramped up. But we're recording Soundography. I'm doing Beyond the Playlist. Still producing Women Kick Ass for Danielle Bergio. And I got a couple new things on the horizon. So lots of cool things.
If folks want to keep up with all those cool things, what should they do?
Go to jhammondc.com or follow me on Twitter at jhammondc.
Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on twitch.tv/Night Attack, which is also carried on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Patreon.com/cordkillers to get Brian back here next week. We'll talk to you then.
Hey guys, Brian and Tom here, and it's just the same old message at the end of the credits, just like always.
That's right, Brian. Nothing new here except your name showing up.
Oh my gosh,
because
I've got a name.
You just supported us on Patreon.
Yeah, all those $5 donors. Look at that. That's your name in pixels. We're gonna make you famous, kid. Put your name in pixels on the
classic
internet.
names in there, but some of you are new. Some of you aren't there. It's sad. What can they do, Brian?
I mean, they could go to patreon.com/cordkillers and pledge $5 an episode and be one of these amazing people, like this one.
Amazing.
Oh, look at that name right there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.